In every society, there are always those who stand apart from their fellows. This is true in Rokugan as it is in any other fictional or real universe. The Scorpion clan are outsiders because of their sinister reputation, the Unicorn clan because of their foreign influences, the Crab clan on account of their lack of social graces. But even among outsiders, the Dragon clan stand out, for their outsider status, unlike the others, is entirely a choice. And it's a choice that's not hard to understand when you realize just who their founder was. His name was Togashi, one of the 10 children of the Lord Moon and Lady Sun. Even back in the days when Togashi lived up in the heavens with his siblings and his parents, he had always stood apart from them. This was mainly due to the fact that he had the gift of foresight, the ability to see the future. It also happened that Togashi was something of a fatalist. When he saw a vision, he believed not only that it was going to happen, but that it must happen. For Togashi was a big believer in the celestial order, in the idea that everything has a purpose and that everyone must serve in whatever capacity fate has ordained for them. And so he foresaw the madness of his father, the Lord Moon. He foresaw his father devouring all of his children in a desperate attempt to prevent their usurpation. And Togashi let it happen because, again, he believed that it was meant to be. When 2 of his siblings, Shinjo and Fu Lang, tried to hide from their father, Togashi actually revealed their location to their father, knowing that he would be devoured along with them. But Togashi was not concerned, for he had also foreseen their rescue by Hantei. And so all came to pass as Togashi had foreseen. Hantei cut open their father's stomach to free his siblings, and all of the remaining kami, except for Ryoshin, who had died by then, fell from the heavens towards the mortal realm. Fu Lang was separated in the fall and ultimately fell into hell, but the other 8 landed safely in the mortal realm on Sepun Hill. When the kami decided to hold a tournament to decide who among them would be the ruler of Rokugan, Togashi was the only one who absented himself from the tournament. For, as always, he had foreseen the future. He knew that Hantei was going to win and felt that his participation would be pointless. According to some sources, during the tournament, Togashi had an encounter with Shinsei, the little sage, but infuriatingly, I couldn't find any details, so as far as I know, there is no mention of just what passed between the sage and the former god. Whatever Shinsei said to him, Togashi decided to take those teachings to heart. After the tournament of the kami, when he was awarded the mountains to the north by Hantei, Togashi went into those mountains, determined to find enlightenment. Unlike the rest of his siblings, Togashi had no interest in acquiring followers or founding a great clan of his own. Enlightenment was all that mattered to him, and he was determined that not a morsel of food nor a drop of water would pass his lips until he had achieved it. And so he sat on a mountaintop and proceeded to meditate. Togashi may not have wanted followers, but he ended up acquiring some anyway. A swordsman named Mirumoto, and a scholarly woman named Agasha. It's never described how they heard of Togashi or why of all the kami they wished to follow him. All we know is that they did. They would constantly bring food and sake to the kami, but Togashi ignored them, for he was determined that he would not move until he understood Shinsei's teachings. However, by becoming part of the mortal realm, Togashi was no longer an immortal god, and he could starve to death just as any mortal man could. By the 9th day, he was emaciated, and Mirumoto and Agasha were starting to fear for his life. On that 9th day, Shinsei arrived looking for Togashi, and Mirumoto and Agasha begged with the little sage to do something, or Togashi would die. At first, Shinsei did nothing. Then, on the 10th day, the little sage walked up to Togashi and sat beside him. Togashi, noticing him, said that he would not move until he understood what the little mortal had taught him. And Shinsei replied, "Neither will I." And Togashi smiled, for he realized that by starving himself in this way, he was also letting down those that he had vowed to protect. And that, in Shinsei's eyes at least, was a selfish act. Togashi may not have asked for this, but it was his duty and his destiny, just as it was the duty and destiny of his siblings. and so Togashi got up and went to speak with Mirumoto and Agasha. Between the three of them, they built a temple in honor of Amaterasu, the lady's son who was Togashi's mother. Then they built a fortress around the temple to protect it. Soon enough, from across the empire, men and women came to learn from the kami and his two disciples, and thus the Dragon Clan was born. Those of a more martial disposition, or those who wished to learn the ways of the sword, became students and, by extension, family members of Mirumoto, self-proclaimed bodyguard of Togashi. Mirumoto's life prior to joining the Dragon Clan is a mystery. He is usually described as tall, with long arms and large hands, and a cross-shaped scar on his face, which was described as not particularly handsome. Personality-wise, he is often described as rude and crude, eager to demonstrate his talent with the sword, but also intelligent and eager to learn new things. He served ably as Togashi's Yojimbo, or personal bodyguard, and by extension, the Mirumoto family effectively became the military arm of the Dragon Clan, responsible for the protection of its lands and holdings. Perhaps Mirumoto's greatest legacy was the invention of the style he called Niten, or Two Heavens, a fighting style that utilizes both the katana and wakizashi of a samurai rather than one sword only, like most styles do. Mirumoto's detractors often referred to the Niten as a coward style, though never to Mirumoto's face. As for Mirumoto himself, he simply thought, how can they not see that two swords are better than one in combat? Unlike his great rival Kakita, the other master swordsman of his generation, Mirumoto sought practicality over artistry in his combat techniques. These differing outlooks and philosophies would lead to an intense, albeit friendly, rivalry between the two sword masters. In case it wasn't obvious by now, Mirumoto is obviously Legend of the Five Rings' homage to the real-life swordmaster Miyamoto Musashi, who also invented a Niten style that uses two swords, and the author of the famous strategy and manual, The Book of Five Rings, the work that obviously inspired the title of this particular property. Mirumoto would ultimately go on to have two sons, though the name of his wife is unknown. The first, Mirumoto Yojiro, was the son of his body, while the other, Mirumoto Hojatsu, was adopted. Both sons were skilled swordsmen, though it was soon acknowledged that Hojatsu was by far the superior. There is only one other anecdote from Mirumoto's life with the Dragon Clan. It is said that when he was 40, Mirumoto decided to become a monk and take vows, promising never to touch a sword again as long as his head was shaved. The story goes that one day, Mirumoto and one of his students were crossing a river by boat when they saw 3 assassins waiting on the other side. When the student asked what they were to do, Mirumoto immediately took out his knife and began carving one of the oars, saying, "You will row, I will fight." By the time they reached the other side, Mirumoto had carved the oar into a boken, a wooden facsimile of a sword, and with it slew all 3 assassins. This is yet another reference to Miyamoto Musashi, who in his most famous duel against Sasaki Kojiro, killed his opponent with a blade carved from a wooden rowing oar. While the more warlike members of the Dragon Clan learned to fight from Mirumoto, those of a more scholarly bent became students of Agasha. Like Mirumoto, Agasha's origins are a mystery. All that is known about her is that she was a woman deeply enamored by nature, a student of magic and the natural world. She became one of the first outsiders to study magic under the tutelage of the Isawa family, and through her, established the strong ties of friendship between the Dragon and Phoenix clans. However, Agasha would go on to learn more than merely magic from the Phoenix clan. She also came to adopt their pacifist ways, although this did nearly cost Agasha her life one day when she was kidnapped by marauding goblins. Luckily, a young man of the Dragon Clan, Togashi Hojiro, came to her rescue. After Agasha's death, many plays and poems would suggest that there was a romance between Agasha and Hojiro, but most credible scholars discount this as unlikely, given that Agasha was 50 at the time and Hojiro a mere stripling of 19. Perhaps Agasha's greatest contribution to both Rokugan as a whole and the Dragon Clan in particular is her great treatise on magic, the Nazo Bubun no Agasha. This work comprises 7 volumes of Agasha's observations of the natural world and mysterious symbols representing the different components of life. The elements, one might say, that make up rocks, trees, animals, and water. In other words, in the fictional universe of Legend of the Five Rings, Agasha was not only the founder of a Shugenja family, she was also the inventor of chemistry. In fact, from Agasha's writings, 2 branches of knowledge were created within the Dragon Clan: Kagaku, chemistry, and Mizugusuri, alchemy. In keeping with her inquisitive nature, Agasha and her family were also the first to pioneer the use of multi-element spells in magic. The way magic works in Rokugan is that a Shugenja makes an incantation, meaning a prayer, to a spirit of one of the 5 elements: fire, water, earth, wind, and void. Agasha was the first to pioneer the idea of combining the powers of multiple spirits of different elements together into one spell. As a result, the Agasha family are perhaps second only to the Isawa in the potency of their magic. And it's possible, though no one tell the Isawa that with their combined knowledge of alchemy and chemistry in addition to magic, the Agasha might just be the best magic family in all of the Emerald Empire. Their Mizugusuri alchemy allows for the creation of elixirs that, when drunk, either boost the physical attributes of the user or the power of a certain spell they wish to cast, while their Kagaku, or chemistry, allows for the creation of more scientific tools and techniques, everything from liquid smoke to ignitable paper to black powder. Given the power and potency of both their alchemy and their chemistry, the Dragon Clan keep these formulae a closely guarded secret. In fact, Agasha's own notes were so encoded and enciphered that it would take almost 8 centuries before members of her own family and clan could translate and understand them. There is no mention of Agasha having a family or children, so it is unknown whether or not, when she eventually died, leadership of the Agasha family passed to one of her offspring or one of her students. If, in those early days, you wanted to join the Dragon Clan and were either uninterested in martial arts like the Mirumoto or in magic and study like the Agasha, then you went directly to learn at the feet of the Kami Togashi himself. Unlike the rest of his divine siblings, Togashi took no wife and sired no children in those early days. Pursuing enlightenment and the wisdom of Shinsei were all that mattered to him. As such, while those that followed him directly would take the Togashi name and be known by the outside world as the Togashi family, it is more accurate to refer to them by the name of Ise-zumi, the name of a monastic order that was founded by Togashi. And here we come to perhaps the most famous aspect of the Dragon Clan, its tattooed warrior monks. It all began with a young soldier of the Lion Clan named Akodo Kaiteru. Dissatisfied with his life as a soldier of the Lion, he chose to travel north and learn from Togashi himself. Togashi tested Kaiteru vigorously, putting him through various trials of strength of body and mind. At last, Togashi deemed the young man worthy and chose to bestow upon him a great gift. Although Togashi had lost his divinity, like most of his siblings upon entering the mortal realm, he still retained many magical powers, including his gift of foresight and the ability to transform into a dragon. More importantly, his blood itself was magic, and so using that blood as ink, he inscribed into the flesh of Kaiteru tattoos that bestowed upon him magical power. Tattooing is not an uncommon practice in the Empire of Rokugan, but only the monks of the Dragon Clan know the secrets of inscribing magical powers into the flesh of its members. And because the original members of the Ise-zumi were inscribed using the blood of Togashi himself, they claim a literal blood tie to the clan's divine founder. But in order to join the Ise-zumi and take on the name of Togashi, an aspiring monk has to complete 4 basic trials. Basic, but incredibly difficult. For enlightenment is not achieved without cost. The first step to becoming an Ise-zumi monk is called the killing of one's parents. Here, the aspiring monk learns to leave behind all vestiges of his old life, so that he may take up his new one and a new name. If he passes the trials and becomes a full monk of the Ise-zumi, he will leave behind his former family name and take the name of Togashi. The second step is called killing the teacher. The senior monks may pass on their wisdom to the young student, but in order to pass the second step, the student must discover his own path to enlightenment. For everyone is different, and no two paths in life are the same. The third step is known as the killing of the self. At this point, the prospective monk learns to abandon any idea of individual self. He acknowledges that he has no self, that he is part of everything and nothing, that like a child, he must live life one moment at a time. With this, the acolyte is formally inducted into the Ise-zumi, deemed worthy of embarking upon the fourth and final step, the lifelong, never-ending quest for enlightenment. As commemoration of this achievement, the monks of the Ise-zumi take the new member and inscribe into his flesh tattoos that symbolize certain aspects of his character, granting him magical powers associated with these symbols. The complete list of dragon monk tattoos is really long and extensive, so I'm just going to use a few examples. Arrowroot is considered the most powerful healing herb in the Empire. Thus, a monk inscribed with the arrowroot tattoo can heal others by transferring the victim's wounds to himself. When invoked, the power of the ocean tattoo grants the monk unlimited energy and power for as long as he desires. The downside is that when the spell has run its course, the monk may not be able to move or speak for an entire day. Those endowed with the serpent tattoo can, if they touch a victim's bare flesh, can cause said victim to become poisoned as if he had been bitten by a snake. And of course, the most famous of them all, the dragon tattoo, who bestows upon its owners the ability to breathe fire. This was the dragon clan at the dawn of the empire. Then, in the 33rd year of that empire, when Togashi was at Otosan Uchi, the capital, along with his brothers and sisters, Fu Leng arrived. Having fallen into hell and become irreversibly corrupted, Fu Leng challenged Hantei for the throne, as he had not participated in the tournament of the kami. Togashi stepped forward, claiming that he would be Hantei's champion. When Fu Leng asked Togashi as the challenged party to name the weapons with which they would fight, the kami of the Dragon Clan, having already foreseen how this must end, declared that he would fight Fu Leng with all the lives of Rokugan, thus declaring war upon Fu Leng and all of his evil works. Of course, as with all things pertaining to the war against Fu Leng, there are absolutely no records of what the Dragon Clan did prior to the Day of Thunder. When Shinsei came to the Dragon Clan asking for a champion, no one protested Togashi's decision to put forward Mirumoto as Dragon Thunder. Knowing that this mission would likely cost him his life, Mirumoto chose to leave behind his own two swords. He did, however, take with him Machimasu, a suit of armor forged for him by Agasha as a sign of friendship. Its name, meaning "I wait," referred to the 10 days that they, the first two followers of Togashi, had waited for the Dragon Clan kami to acknowledge them. Togashi's choice, as ever, proved a wise one. Moments before the final confrontation with the Dark God himself, Shinsei is said to have taken Mirumoto aside and said to him only, "No escape." The final battle was terrible. Shosuro and Hida Atarasi were wounded. Doji Konishiko, Matsu, and Otaku were slain. Isawa was mortally wounded. Realizing that it was now or never, the dying Phoenix Thunder called upon all of his considerable magic to begin the spell that would defeat Fu Leng. Realizing what was about to happen, the Dark God attempted to flee, only to find Mirumoto, master swordsman of the Dragon Clan, barring his way. Fu Leng ultimately slew Mirumoto, but the Dragon Thunder had bought Isawa the time needed to complete the spell, fragmenting the Dark God's essence and sealing it within the Black Scrolls. With his life, Mirumoto had bought victory for the Emerald Empire. The armor Machimasu would remain lost to the Mirumoto family for centuries until it was recovered by scouts from the Hiruma family and purified. When word of Mirumoto's death reached the Dragon Clan, Mirumoto's biological son, Mirumoto Yojiro, chose to step aside and let his adopted half-brother, Mirumoto Hojatsu, succeed their father as leader of the Mirumoto family, insisting that Hojatsu was the better swordsman and the successor that Mirumoto himself would have wanted. Hojatsu would go on to compile and write down his adopted father's teachings on swordsmanship into a training manual of the Niten style. For once, there's actually a lot of exhaustive detail about the Niten style, its techniques, and its philosophy. So much, in fact, that to list them all would make this video well over an hour and a half. So I'm going to restrict myself to the few details that I think are the most interesting. Much like the real-world Book of the Five Rings, the Niten training manual is more philosophy than a manual of sword techniques. Because Miyamoto Musashi, much like Bruce Lee, did not believe in restricting himself to one particular method or style. And by extension, neither do the students of Niten. The Niten manual focuses a great deal on observing the enemy, and thus determining his strengths and weaknesses. It talks about being flexible in combat, and how all moves are valid. According to the manual itself, where Niten diverges the most from other sword styles is that the other styles focus on teaching rhythm to its students, the beats of a certain kata or series of movements. By contrast, Niten emphasizes timing, advising its students to strike precisely between the beats of your opponent's rhythm, thus throwing them off balance and leaving them vulnerable. For example, if an opponent breathes on 1, prepares on 2, and then strikes on 3, you, the Niten user, must strike between beats 1 and 2. My favorite part, honestly, is what the manual calls the 5 enemies. Essentially, the 5 weaknesses would be a more appropriate term, as they describe the different kinds of enemies you can encounter and how to beat them. These 5 enemies, quote-unquote, are the vain enemy, the negligent enemy, the angry enemy, the exhaustible enemy, and the cowardly enemy. The vain enemy will be fooled by your humility. The negligent enemy can be defeated in detail. The angry enemy can be drawn off balance. The exhaustible enemy tires himself quickly, and the cowardly enemy defeats himself. In addition to inheriting his adopted father's sword style, Hojatsu would also inherit Mirumoto's rivalry with Kakita, the crane sword master. Eventually, this would only end with the two masters killing themselves in a duel. Hojatsu would in turn be succeeded by his best student, Kijame, who, after marrying Hojatsu's daughter, Mirumoto Ujaniko, chose to take her name so as to continue the family line as well as to honor his sensei and the family founder. As for Togashi, the kami of the Dragon Clan would become increasingly withdrawn in the years following the Day of Thunder. He would still meet and speak with his siblings, particularly Bayushi and Doji, but increasingly he became more and more withdrawn, more obsessed with pursuing enlightenment. Eventually, Togashi was pronounced dead by the Isezumi monks in the year 101. Because Togashi had produced no heir, he was succeeded by one of his fellow Isezumi monks, a man who called himself Togashi Furukusai. Ever since then, the Dragon Clan champion has always been one of the Isezumi monks, and no one outside the Isezumi itself even knows how the monks choose the next clan champion after the previous one has died. Occasionally, rumors would speak of potential successors to the leadership being referred to as Tamashi, but no one was able to figure out exactly what that meant, and no one ever would find out until the secret was revealed over 1,000 years later at the apex of the clan wars. And that is very much a story for another time. In this way, the Dragon Clan would persist for centuries, led by the Isezumi monks and supported by the Mirumoto and Agasha families. The Dragon Clan would not gain another samurai family until centuries later, when a young administrator named Agasha Kitsuki saved the life of the then Mirumoto daimyo and was rewarded with the elevation to daimyo status himself and the creation of the Kitsuki family. Despite coming from the Agasha, a family of Shugenja, neither Kitsuki nor any of his descendants ever made any great efforts to study or develop magical powers. Instead, the Kitsuki family became known as the diplomats and magistrates of the Dragon Clan, representing the Dragon Clan at the imperial court and doing the actual running of the clan itself, while the Mirumoto focus on their swordsmanship, the Agasha study their magic and alchemy, and the monks of the Isezumi focus on the path to enlightenment. Of all the courtier families in Rokugan, though, the Kitsuki are most known for their integrity and honesty. They are known as the hospitable dragons, and are greatly respected by all, even the Crab Clan, who is known for being mostly contemptuous of politics. Because these events happen much later in the history of the Empire, the story of Kitsuki and his rise to power in detail will have to wait for a future video. What I can say in this video is that Kitsuki's greatest legacy and his greatest contribution to his family and his clan was the development of what is known as the Kitsuki method. Because they are a family of magistrates, administrators, and justicars, the Kitsuki family often have to dispense justice to criminals within the land of the Dragon Clan. And the Kitsuki method, named after their founder, are essentially an early form of Sherlock Holmesian observation and deductive reasoning skills. Young members of the family are taught to rely on awareness, deduction, and intuition as ways of exposing and putting an end to criminals. This made the Kitsuki family famous among the courtier families of the Empire, as well as make them deadly enemies of the Scorpion clan, a clan that cherishes its own secrets and doesn't really like some nosy dragons poking around in their business. Which of course segues nicely into how the Dragon Clan relates to the other great clans of Rokugan. Uniquely among the great clans of Rokugan, the dragon don't really have enemies or allies. To their mind, every one of the great clans has a purpose and a value to the Empire. And because of the Dragon Clan's inward focus on enlightenment and the spiritual, they tend to view the other clans with a kind of detached tolerance. They are quick to recognize the value of each clan and what it brings to the imperial table, but they are also quick to point out what they perceive as the flaws in the methods and beliefs of the other great clans. The closest thing the Dragon Clan has to a friendship would be their close ties with the Phoenix Clan. This is because both clans are very spiritual and both are dedicated to the teachings of Shinsei. Where they differ is in how they approach those teachings. The Phoenix focus on understanding the world and magic, but to the Dragon Clan, such studies are just another material distraction from what really matters. As for the Unicorn Clan, while the Dragon do view some of their foreign attitudes as strange, they do see the value of experience from the outside world that the Unicorn Clan bring to the Empire. But the Dragon think that the Unicorn are perhaps a little too enamored with their escapades and adventures in the lands beyond the Empire. The Unicorn have been incredibly lucky to survive as long as they had in a landscape inhabited by vicious monsters and savage barbarians. But it is never a good thing to rely overly on luck. For luck is a fickle thing, eager to tempt you and just as ready to leave you dangling in the breeze. The Dragon respect the Crab for their great strength and devotion to duty, but in their eyes, the Crab are perhaps a little too over-reliant on their strength. On the strength of their walls, the strength of their armor, and the strength of the magics they use to counteract the Shadowlands' taint. The Crab are always vigilant against the enemy from without, but the Dragon wonder if the Crab are just as perceptive of the weaknesses and blind spots within themselves. As for the Scorpion Clan, unlike the rest, the Dragon do see the value of the Scorpion, their intelligence network, and their ability to root out traitors. But like the other clans, they do think that the Emperor might not want to repose too much trust in the Scorpion. For the Scorpion are a clan obsessed with uncovering secrets. Secrets are power, and power ultimately corrupts. The Lion are to be commended for their commitment to honor and loyalty. They are to be praised for their strength and their courage. But ever since their Kami founder, Akodo, chose to reject the teachings of Shinsei, the Dragon Clan have always found it hard to get along with the Lion. As for the Crane, the richest and most politically astute of the clans, they have their own strengths, but to the Dragon Clan, the Cranes seem more interested in utilizing the weaknesses of others rather than using those strengths. Dedicating oneself to culture and art is all well and fine, but the Dragon can't help but see these as petty compared to more spiritual concerns. In short, most of the great clans are a little too materialistic for the Dragon's taste. The Dragon Clan are perhaps the least involved of the great clans, content to spend their days in their mountain fortresses and monasteries, honing their skills and pursuing enlightenment. They tend to generally set themselves above the, in their eyes, petty squabbles of the other great clans, and the politics of the imperial court. However, when one looks through the history of Rokugan as a whole, from the war with Fu Leng all the way up to the clan wars and beyond, the dragon may abstain from small conflicts and issues, but whenever some major event occurred in the history of the empire, whether it be the first Gozoku, the first rising of the Blood Speaker Iyuchiban, the Scorpion Coup, or the Destroyer War, the Dragon Clan have always been there. They're not always the star of the show. More often they are the great influencer, lending their support to one side of a conflict or the other. And every time, the winner has always been the side taken by the Dragon Clan. The Dragon are slow and reluctant to act, but when they do, a man would be wise to sit up and take notice.